Everyone, I've got a couple of things to update you on. First of all, I think we ought to start with the housekeeping arrangements. There are no planned fire alarm tests today. Should the fire alarm sound, please proceed to your closest fire exit and follow the green running person signage. I'm sorry, I forgot the signage word. The green running person signage out to the assembly point, which is across from the building in the members' lower and upper car park, and await further instruction. If members require a break, tea, coffee, water and biscuits will be served in the Darrant room just over the way there at 8:30. Toilets are located off the corridor outside the council chamber. Lastly, when speaking, please ensure that you use your microphone. Thank you very much. The other thing I'd like you to say, we've been in rather an unusual position in that two people qualify to be deputy mayor next year. I have just been in the other room there drawing not lots, might be drawing knots as well, but I've been drawing lots. And the person who has been selected, who won the lot, was Councillor Gordon Newton. So that will be verified by full council in due course, but I thought I would let you know, members. So let's move on. These proceedings will be webcast and recorded by the council, but will anyone else be recording or filming? Normally we do have Councillor Mackay. Thank you for letting us know, Councillor Mackay. It's not to prevent you from doing so, it's just so that we're all aware. Thank you. Yes, we all know that's happening. I think I can safely... Are we all right? Okay, I'm going to move on to apologies for absence. I have received apologies for absence from Councillor Mrs. Ring and Councillor Wilby. Are there any other apologies? Oh, Councillor Webb. Thank you. Oh, I beg your, thank you for the clarification. Appropriately reminded by Councillor Simon Webb. Okay. From the other side of the chamber to boot. Applications for dispensations. I will ask the Deputy Head of Legal, the Interim Deputy Head of Legal Partnership and Monitoring Officer, whether or not we have any applications for dispensations.
We have none, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much indeed. Bear with me, members. Thank you, members. I'm sorry. We're now on to item 4, disclosures by members and officers. Are there any disclosable pecuniary interests or other significant interests by any members here? I don't... Are you all right, Councillor Nagy? Jolly good. I don't see any, so thank you very much. On to disclosures of lobbying to officers. I don't think that. Disclosures by officers, none. Disclosures of lobbying. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? Good. I can see Councillor Michelle Hasty. Which item?
Just one, isn't it?
Just that one, the one item on this evening. And Councillor Kimmants. And Councillor Bob Hinder, and, tell me your name.
Patrick Garton.
Councillor Patrick Garton. I do apologise. I haven't seen you for a while. There's a lady at the back. Councillor Heidi. Thank you. Apologies, Heidi. I haven't seen you. And Councillor Louise Bryce. Councillor Anne Brindle. And Councillor de Wigendine. How far have I got? I think... Is there anybody else? Have I got everybody? Jolly good. Thank you very much. The next item is item 7, petitions. There are no petitions this evening. Item 8 is question and answer session from members of the public. I'm aware that there are no questions from members of the public. Questions from council members. I'm not aware of any councillor who wishes to ask any questions. May I ask, are there any councillors who we are waiting for this evening? Have we got everybody here? I've had a... Yeah.
So council forecast is yet to...
Well, I'm not... Okay, members, rather than wait any longer, I really would like to move on to item 10.
Councillor Burton wishes to ask a question.
Oh, Councillor Burton, I beg your pardon.
Madam Mayor, can I just get clarity that the reception desk is still manned for directions? Because the person we're waiting for will not know how to find us expediently, and everybody else had that treatment.
Yes, somebody has just been dispatched. Is that all right? And
yeah, just to say, I think I might record it actually, if that's okay. Just so that I can have permission to record proceedings today. Sorry, I've just been thinking about it. So, yeah.
Well, there's the speed of that particular... Yes, okay. Permission is... I'm more than happy with that. Yes, and I tell you what, I'm not making a very good start this evening, members, because I've actually missed out item 6, which is to consider whether any item should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information. We all know that we don't have any yellow papers this evening, so therefore, members, are we agreed that the items on the agenda be taken in public as proposed? Agreed. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Mackay, are you all right? You're not wishing to ask a question, are you? You can do if you like. Bit late, but never mind.
I mean, 2 people recording this. I think one was quite sufficient, wasn't it?
Now, come on, let's have a little bit of respect for this council meeting here. And besides, I'm the one that makes the jokes, thank you. Now then, let us move swiftly on. Oh, Councillor Bryce.
Okay, apologies. So the tech. Do we don't use the voting buttons? Can you just clarify how? Because we've got 4 abstain against. So we're not using the voting buttons. No. So just in the traditional manner.
Thank you for raising that. No, we are not going to use the voting buttons. Voting will be done by show of hands. Councillor Simon Webb.
I'm sorry to point this out, Madam Mayor, but you've now done it because when somebody speaks, you need to turn your microphone off, and which you have done now, but before that you weren't. So I apologise for interrupting because you're doing it perfectly right now.
Only on this occasion, Councillor Webb, but thank you for reminding me. It's one of my worst faults. Thank you. Look, members, is it all right if we go on to the motion 10? I now call upon Councillor Pearl to move the motion relating to whole council elections. I look to Councillor Burton afterwards, but first of all, Councillor Pearl, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Should I stand? I'm sorry, I don't know the protocol in here.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank
Can't
you.
see a thing.
Oh, yes. Madam Mayor, I beg to move the motion on the papers. Members will recall that I moved a similar motion at our meeting on 29th September, and I made it clear that if there was a majority in the chamber in favour, matching the clear majority of local opinion, but not the required 2/3 majority, then we would persist. Since that meeting, members may have noticed there's been something of a change in the political balance of the council, and I believe, therefore, it is right that we retest this motion before looking at any other available routes. I said last time that this motion is not really about whether we have whole council elections in 2024, because the fact of the boundary review means that we certainly will have a set then. What tonight's vote is about is much the same as previously. It is about what we tell the Local Government Boundary Commission in terms of our review. If we tell them now that we're still not prepared to switch to normal elections, we can expect the boundary review to proceed on the basis of defaulting to 3-member wards. That would mean... Thank you. That would mean sweeping away most of the existing single-member wards and 2-member wards, whatever the local identities that would trample over. That would mean single-member wards like Barming and Teeson, Borton on Chelsea, Downswood and Ottham, Langley, Leeds, Luce, and others are likely to go, along with 2-member wards like Staplehurst or Harwich and Lenham, or indeed even historic Bridge Ward. That is why I'm asking you to support this motion tonight. You'll recall, ma'am, that at the last meeting when we had this subject, I asked for a recorded vote, and the meeting obviously then turned into something like a cross between sort of Spartacus and High School Musical. I think, though, on critical issues like this, recorded votes do help members on all sides. So I would take the opportunity now to request one for tonight's vote. And in that respect, I imagine members on perhaps all sides will support me. And on that basis, ma'am, I beg to move.
Point of order. Do I have a point of order, Councillor English? Can I turn to Councillor Burton, please, to second the motion which is on the papers?
I'm happy to second, Madam Mayor. Can we take clarity of whether you require members to stand to initiate the recorded vote?
I don't believe I do I? It's already asked for. Yes, if anybody wants a recorded vote, can you please stand now? Oh, I'm in doubt. OK, there will be a recorded vote. Thank you very much.
And Madam Mayor, if I could reserve my right to speak as seconder.
Sorry, can you...
Madam Mayor, if I may reserve my right to speak as seconder.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did comment rather flippantly, though, if we were saving the public money, that actually there should be a motion on abolishing the police commissioner elections, but that's another issue. The situation, as the leader of the council's said in previous occasions, and the deputy leader has just said, in terms of the political balance of the council. Don't worry, I won't be long.
Have you ever had a feeling it's going to be one of those evenings? Now, come on, let's have a bit of order, please. Councillor English, please proceed.
Right. There is a curse that's often used in children's stories. May you get what you wish for. Given the numbers in this council, I'm not going to detain people this evening by making an impassioned defence of the position I actually do believe in, because you do have the numbers. I'm not going to detain this meeting long, because we have other matters that are far more, shall we say, susceptible to perhaps reasoned argument this evening that we are to debate in the next meeting. I would say that we are minded in our group to give you what you want and to sit back and watch the consequences, so my group will be abstaining this evening.
Councillor Harper. Quiet, please. Councillor Harper.
We feel this is rather a cynical move by the Conservative group to subvert a decision which was clearly made back in September. Why, the situation still remains. Why replace a system that is not broken? Our current system's worked well for the residents of Maidstone for decades now. It is simple and, with 3-member wards, easy to understand. The consultation referred to earlier was flawed, as I think everybody here knows, and was discussed back in September. It was partisan and not objective. The current system keeps us in touch with the public. With 4 yearly elections, it will reduce the influence the public can have on the council. So why abolish the current system? Well, it does require more work by us all. We have elections in 3 out of 4 years, so we have to be talking to our residents and electors more frequently. Clearly, the easy way is just to stay at home and only have to come out every 4 years. Our system also enables residents and other individuals to put up particular candidates on current issues, as we saw earlier this year, with at least one person standing in East Ward. That may not be so easy to do if you only have elections every 4 years. Topicality will be reduced. Will it save money, which we're told it will do? Well, unlikely, because as Clive English mentioned earlier, we have the police commissioner elections, we have parish council elections and local referendums. And those are all frequently held on the years outside of the KCC, and if we have if we have 4 yearly elections. So there will be annual elections, whether there's an MBC system in place or not. The current system represents a strand, if you like, going the whole way back in terms of democracy to ancient Greece, where it was invented, and it was invented with annual elections. Democracy has had to be fought for by the people of this country. People have died to get the vote. And it was only through the work of the Chartists in the 19th century and the suffragettes more recently in the early 20th century that ordinary people got the right to vote. And without continual struggle, the vote would never have been given to ordinary working class people. Maidstone's system works well. We have a representative council. The Conservatives, I take my hat off to you on this occasion, won a majority in May. But that could well vanish next year, depending on the will of the people. If we go to 4 yearly elections, we will no longer reflect the will of the people on a current basis. Thank you.
Thank you. I look to a seconder for your motion.
No. You spoke on the motion. You just need to...
You've spoken? Oh, you haven't? Oh, all right then.
Any other speakers?
Are there any other speakers? I know I've got Councillor Munford and I've got Councillor Rose, but I take Councillor Munford first and then Councillor Rose.
I started, so I'll finish. No, I haven't. I did do my research. I very rarely stand up. I know nothing about three-member wards. I went to one councillor who's just spoken and asked him what the advantage in a three-member ward is for the 1/3 elections. He says it keeps us on our toes. All I say is that's very expensive ballet lessons. One of the casualties, and there are casualties, are the single and two-member wards. So I'm sure you've all considered the financial side. You've all considered the arguments about going against what the residents have asked us to do. But I'd like to put the case for a single-member ward, because that's the casualty. I represent two communities. Those two communities have parish boundaries and are known as parishes. They are ancient boundaries. My mother came from one of those parishes, Chartsutton. My father came from Bolton and Chelsea. We represent our community. By virtue of a single primary school, the two communities are connected to each other. In a three-member ward, what you will do is you will turn my two communities into a group of electorate. You will take my two parishes and turn them into an area of ground. It's an honour to serve my community as a single member, and I ask you all to consider what you're doing tonight to single-member wards. Previous to me, we've had Ian Ellis, 16 years, is now still on a parish council. After him, we had Mike Fitzgerald, who is on, did I say Ian Ellis first, and then Mike Fitzgerald, 12 years, he's on one of my parish councils. We get the continuity that you would not get from a three-member ward. You will, if you vote against this, stop all of that history and all of that community spirit and identity.
I will just mention two parishes, Hunton and Linton. They do not get the identity and the exposure because they are three-member ward.
Thank you very much, Councillor Munford. You're just in the 3 minutes. I think... Oh, Councillor Simon Webb. You're next, I think. Oh, I beg your pardon. Before you do, Councillor Webb, I beg your pardon, Councillor Margaret Rose. Please proceed.
Thank you. A particular plank in the argument for whole council elections has been its financial cost. The suggestion has been that the whole council elections are less expensive than what we know as third election system. In the case of cost of elections, I have been reliably advised by a former very senior and highly respected Maidstone Borough Council that an in-depth financial report was compiled in 2018. This report came out with the result that, taking into consideration all points, there was little, if no difference financially between either system. What I would like us to consider is that no matter what our democratic system costs, we should be willing to bear that cost. Democracy is the will of the people and is founded on the opportunity to express that will through their vote, which acts as a continuation of the will of the people. This is the foundation of our country, and this freedom of expression is the responsibility which I am sure we all take as the highest duty and responsibility. In this continuation of democracy, I urge you to vote for the ongoing electoral system of yearly elections known as thirds, which gives the continuation of an electoral system that offers an ongoing opportunity for the will of the people to be clearly and unmistakably received. The alternative is to put in place a 4-yearly electoral system which can only give what might be thought of as a brief snapshot view of the will of the people concerning any particular situation or thoughts and wishes of the people. This snapshot of whole council election system cannot, as it is set in continuing process of representing the will of the people, it can be thought that after a time that this not able to serve its purpose. However, an ongoing process such as thirds yearly system has no such shackles and stultifying action in democratic process. This can only be served by continuing our present process of election, which is the yearly thirds system. May I also be allowed to say that as a former serving member and wife of a serving member of the armed forces and coming from a military family, may I understand only too well the sacrifices made to ensure our democracy. We all know of and honour those who have fought to secure our democracy, and we give the highest honour to those who have paid the greatest sacrifice to ensure the ongoing continuation of our democratic freedom. We have our part of
Your 3 minutes are up. I'm very sorry, Councillor Rose, but that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I move on to the next speakers, and before I forget, as I haven't been doing very well so far, I think it's Councillor Forecast. I saw you come in. Could you please let me know, or let all of us know, have you any disclosures at all?
No, Madam Mayor.
And have you any disclosures of lobbying?
No.
Thank you very much. The next... Sorry, can you refer to your list? Yes. The next person I have is Councillor Simon Webb.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've listened to previous speakers on the motion who are obviously clearly, I would say, a little bit confused. Because I've been in education for 46 years before I came onto the council, and very clearly effective leadership, sustained leadership, and effective management can only be undertaken if the leadership of the council has a time to embed and a time to understand and a time to learn how the systems in the council work. To have yearly elections causes undue chaos in the development of the borough council. I'm confused by Councillor Mumford's comment about Hunton. I am, along with Councillor Parfitt-Reid and Councillor Richard Webb, councillors of Hunton. I don't think Hunton is suffering. I think, far from that, I think we are quite outstanding councillors for them. So if I could say, I don't agree with you, Councillor Mumford, and I think for continuity we should vote for the 4-yearly election. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Simon Webb. The next on my list, I have Councillor Annabel Blackmore, then followed by Councillors Hastie and Perry. So over to you, Councillor Blackmore.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think most of the points have been picked up. I agree, actually, with Councillor Mrs Rose about the will of the people. I think it's absolutely right. They should speak. And they did speak because a survey was undertaken and they came back to say that they would support 4-yearly elections. So I think that is indicative that the local will of the people has actually been listened to. I think more importantly, though, when we have issues, for example, like the local plan, which is incredibly important, the timelines can become skewed when you have annual elections. So, as Councillor Webb has said, if you have a 4-yearly cycle, it is very stable. And I think when you have critical timelines, especially with the local plan, and we have had a bit of a topsy-turvy time with our local plan, so I think in order to stick to that in the future, and in order to stick to other timelines, if we don't have the PERDA period of effectively 6 weeks every year, then I think that will enable far stronger and stable local government. Therefore, I support the 4-yearly cycle.
Thank you, Councillor Blackmore. And I have Councillor Hastie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My points were going to be very similar to Mrs Blackmore, but also I wanted to just try to understand why some people are referring to the fact that it's not democratic, and why people are going, that the people who fought hard to get the votes are all of a sudden going to have those taken away, when I think historically the less frequently you have to vote, the more people are going to be inclined to actually vote. And as Mrs Blackmore said, there was a public consultation in a survey, and that is what the residents of the borough have supported. And, you know, how can we say that we are here to serve them if we don't listen to anything and we just keep things how they were historically? And that's why I'll be changing my mind from my original vote last time.
Thank you, Councillor Hastie. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I was a little surprised to hear the comments about democracy, because as far as I understand it, the default position of our national parliament and government is a 5-year term. So why is that not democratic? I'm sorry, I don't really buy your argument. Now, Councillor Harper referred to the Chartists. Very interesting, a very important group historically. But they campaigned for annual elections, and that lost them everything, because it's quite clear to the British public that annual elections were a completely non-starter. And so the Chartist movement collapsed over that one particular position. The Greek democracy you quote is an interesting one, but that is one of the most gerrymandered democracies. It is the start of democracy in this world, I accept that, but it was hardly democratic when it was basically based on your personal power, and large sections of your population were completely ignored. If you want that sort of democracy, you can have it, but it's not my definition of a democracy. What also was mentioned, and by Councillor Blackmore, and I totally agree with this, is the issue of PERDA. If you have elections every 3 years, you have a PERDA period of 6 weeks, and you completely are stuck. That is costly. And I think everybody should realise that. Our business comes to a much slower halt, and the whole thing just doesn't really work. The officers have a problem with it, councillors have a problem with it. So on all these bases, I totally support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. I now have Councillor Garton, and after Councillor Garton, it'll be Councillor Mackay. Thank you, Councillor Garton.
Madam Mayor, I didn't really want to speak tonight, but I am deeply offended by the comments made by Councillor Harper and Councillor Rose. We are not here tonight to abolish democracy. We want to make democracy more efficient. And I took soundings from members in my ward, and I declared earlier that I was lobbied on this item, and I will vote accordingly by the message which I was given by residents in my ward. And also, as Councillor Blackmore said, we did have a public consultation on this issue.
Thank you, Councillor Garton, and I have Councillor Mackay.
If we go on much longer with this debate, we'll be in Plan B already. Can I move that we take the vote and put this to an end?
As it happens, I don't have any further speakers. You've all had a briefing note as well that's been circulated, but it's fine.
Yeah, he reserved his right hand. Paul can sum up.
Okay, Councillor Burton, you reserved your right. Would you like to speak now?
Madam Mayor, yes, if I can, please, and to be as brief as possible. For me, this has never been about taking a political advantage or wanting 4 yearly elections for a political gain. It hasn't. Really simply, it hasn't. A lot of my time on the council has been involved with the local plan making process, and I can't tell you how many times that ground to a halt because an election was coming, not just because of the pure element of PERDA, but because people went to political election positions, not even thought out positions, and the process just grinds to a halt. And my passion for actually having a 4 yearly election cycle comes from those reasons. Cost, I agree with, was it Councillor Harper who mentioned cost, or Mrs Rose? Cost shouldn't come into this. Democracy is precious and it's valuable. It's not for cost. It might well be that the 4 yearly is more efficient and money saving, but that doesn't tip it for me. But ultimately, this is an argument of democracy. And it's democracy that is going to take place tonight. Even I'm going to say disadvantaged democracy, because where is the democracy in a 2/3 majority being required? But that's the way it is. So if we've listened to the people who've given us a message through surveys, not once, but not twice, and as my recollection in both cases, in excess of a 2/3 majority, tonight we must deliver the will of the people for the right reasons, and for me it has never been about political gain. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. I understand that Councillor Pearl, it is down to you to sum up before we go to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll keep it brief. Councillor Harper mentioned the Chartists and the suffragettes fighting for the vote. Just as a sort of historical note, you may remember that Maidstone's greatest MP, Benjamin Disraeli, in fact passed the Second Reform Act in 1867, which he seems to have omitted, and that and the torrent of gin and beer is why he beat Mr Gladstone in 1874. On a practical point, though, Councillor Harper says that the current system is not broken and it has served Maidstone well. With respect, I believe that that statement could be falsified by going outside and opening one's eyes. Councillor Munford, I felt, has made probably the most pertinent point. 4 yearly elections are necessary for preserving single-member and two-member wards. That was the point I opened with, and that's the point I close with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pearl. We now go to the vote. It will be a recorded vote, and I now hand over to our Chief Executive.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, members. So, as I call out your name, can you indicate whether you are voting for, against, or abstaining? For brevity, perhaps you will forgive me if I don't use the word councillor each time. So, if I could start, please, with Councillor Bartlett.
For.
Blackmore.
For.
Bryce. Brindle.
For.
Bryant.
For.
Burton.
For.
Cannon.
For.
Clark. Coates. Cook.
For.
Cooper.
For.
Cox. Cumming.
For.
Daly. I'm sorry, Councillor Daly, which way will you be voting? For. Thank you. English. Eves.
For.
Fissenden. For those people who couldn't hear, Councillor Fissenden was voting for. Forecast.
For.
Fort.
For.
Garton.
For.
Gooch.
For.
Grigg. For. Thank you. Harper.
Again.
Harwood.
Abstain.
Hasty.
For.
Hinder.
For.
Holmes. Joy.
For.
Cadker.
Abstain.
Kimmants. Mackay.
For.
McKenna.
For.
Mortimer.
Abstain.
Councillor Munford.
For.
Nagy. Councillor Newton.
For.
Parfitt Reid.
For.
Perry.
For.
Pearl.
For.
Robertson.
Abstain.
Councillor Daniel Rose.
For.
Councillor Margaret Rose. Councillor Round.
For.
Russell.
For.
Councillor Janetta Sams.
Against.
Councillor Tom Sams.
Against.
Councillor Spooner.
For.
Springett.
For.
I'm going to struggle again. Trubinsky. Councillor Simon Webb.
For.
De Wigan Shepherd.
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Young. Councillor Young? I'm sorry. Thank you.
Sorry, for.
Yeah, thank you. you want me to give you their numbers?
I would rather have them, if you don't mind. Okay, members, can I have your attention, please? The outcome is 39 for, 5 against, 8 abstentions. That means that the required two-thirds majority has been met. Therefore, the motion has been carried. We have now turned to 4 yearly elections. Now, members, that's the end of this particular extraordinary meeting. Now, please remain in your seats as our ordinary full council meeting follows very shortly when I've sorted myself out. Thank you very much. Come on, Councillor Webb, you're last and least. Okay. That we are all here. Silence, please. I wish to welcome you back to this Maidstone Borough Council meeting this evening, the 8th of December 2021. We will be webcast, the proceedings will be webcast and recorded by the Council. Will anyone else be recording or filming them? Councillor Mackay? No more. Okay. Just so that we are all aware, that it's happening. Okay. Apologies for absence. I have Councillor Mrs. Ring and Councillor Wilby. Can I be reminded of Richard Webb? Thank you very much. Councillor Richard Webb is absent. Applications for dispensation. Can I ask whether or not we have any applications for dispensation?
We do not, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Disclosures by members and officers. Do we have any disclosures? None that we are aware of. Lovely, thank you. Moving on to the next item 4, disclosures of lobbying. Do we have any disclosures of lobbying? Councillor Simon Webb, or can you call out your names, please? Councillor Bartlett. Thank you. And Garton, Cook. Are they all on the same item? No, we better start again and do it on. Tell me which item you wish to, your disclosure is on. So when you say your name, you need to say the item number, and let's give our officer time to write that down, please. Bartlett, I believe you were first in the queue.
Item 20.
Item 20.
Councillor Margaret Rose, which item?
Item 20.
Thank you. Councillor Harper.
Item 20.
Say your name and item. Yes, trying to. Somebody round here. We've got Councillor English.
Item 20 and 21.
Thank you. Councillor Nagy.
20 and 21.
Thank you. Hold on. Have we got those? Officers? Good. Councillor Clark. 20. Councillor Tom Sands. Thank you. Councillor Janetta Sands. Thank you. Councillor Robertson.
Item 20.
Councillor Munford. Thank you. Councillor Mortimer.
Item 20.
Thank you. Coming round now to this side, Councillor Webb. Councillor Brindle.
Item 20.
And
Madam Mayor?
Councillor Hinder. We might just as well say that everybody's got something on item 20. Can we do that? It's going to be so much easier. I'm getting dizzy going around the room. Has anybody not been lobbied on item 20? Let's do it this way. Has anybody not been lobbied on item 20? No. So I can safely say that everybody has been lobbied on item 20. Good. Item 21, has anybody not been lobbied on item 21? Whoa, okay. Okay, let's stop. So, can you please put your hand up if you have been lobbied on item 21? Thank you. And officers are now taking those names down now. let me know when you're done. Okay, you've got everybody's names? Apart from items 20 and 21, are there any other items or any other members that have been lobbied? And silence reigns. Okay, members, thank you very much indeed. Next item is item 5. Is it agreed that we take all the items in private as we have no items on the agenda? In public. You see, this is what happens when you don't have a cup of tea before the council meeting. So I do apologise. I can assure you that I'm sure the next mayor will be a bit better at it than I am. To consider whether any items should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information. None. So is it agreed that the items can be taken in public? Thank you. The minutes of the extraordinary meeting of the Borough Council held on the 29th of September 2021. Can we agree those as a correct record, members? Thank you very much. Item 7, minutes of the meeting of the Borough Council held on the 29th of September 2021. Are the minutes of that meeting agreed? Can we agree that, members? Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. And the item 8, the extraordinary meeting. Just one meeting, please, gentlemen. Thank you. The minutes of the meeting, the extraordinary meeting, held on the 6th of October, which is item 8. Are we all agreed that those minutes are correct and accurate? Thank you very much indeed. Look, believe it or not, I have got some mayor's announcements, and you are just going to have to be patient, because I have been very busy. Not only that, but our county town of Kent, is really buzzing. At Lock Meadow Complex, I've opened our fantastic food hall, the gorgeous new play area outside, Santa's biggest post box inside. Jubilee Square, we had throngs of people when I switched on the Christmas lights with Father Christmas. And well done, One Maidstone, for staging a great show for our residents outside the town hall. Speaking of which, I was at the gala opening of Jack and the Beanstalk, the panto at the Hazlitt. It's a great bit of terrific entertainment. Please, if you haven't been to see it, do take your children to see it. We've got a wonderful theatre. Let's use it. It was a great panto. It was on a bitterly cold morning that I formally opened the new concourse at Maidstone East Station, along with the great and good from Network Rail South East, our leader, Councillor Burton, Councillor David Brazier, the County Councillor for Highways and Transport. He's the member there, cabinet member. Did we shiver? But interestingly, I hadn't realised how big the Valley Invicta Academies Trust was until last night. I went to their very first Christmas concert, and it was put on by the new addition to their campus, which is the School of Science and Technology. And it only opened 18 months ago. And those young choirs put on a great show. The standard was high. They sang their hearts out. It was wonderful, the good harmonies. And it clearly showed the incredible hard work and dedication of all the teachers there. Interestingly, one of the pupils I spoke to was a bullying contact. That is to say, their job is to be the go-to person for any of their colleagues, friends, pupils who can go to if they feel that they've been bullied. And there's also an app that they can use if they feel that they're being bullied. I found that really reassuring, and it means that this highly acclaimed trust takes such a positive approach to serious issues faced by our young people, and that they work to maintain that positive approach across their 4 secondary schools and 5 primary schools. Admittedly, not all of them are in our borough, but they're part of our community. I was equally impressed and greatly moved when I visited parents, teachers and pupils at the Bower Grove School Christmas Fair. You may know about Bower Grove. It's a special school offering high-quality education for children and young people between 4 and 16 with varied abilities and learning styles. They're headed up by Lynn Salter. She's been there for 25 years. What an inspiration that was. You know their strapline, "Together we inspire and achieve." That's not a bad strapline. I'll remember that. And their 3 R's aren't reading, writing, arithmetic, but it's respectful, responsible and ready to learn. And I think that's something that a lot more of us could heed. My visit to the opening of the hydrotherapy pool at 5 Acre Wood School was particularly moving. It's a special school for children and young people between 2 and 19 with profound, severe and complex learning difficulties. The welcoming party included a dear young lad in his wheelchair. He couldn't manage to activate his recording of "Welcome to our school." He had to manipulate this knob. But after a little coaxing, we managed to communicate enough, he and I, to do a high five. And that really meant so much to me. I'm not sure how much it meant to him. Thank you to those who attended my civic service on the 4th of November. What a wonderful turnout for the annual Remembrance Parade soon after. And that same afternoon of the Remembrance Parade, I had the honour of presenting Good Conduct Awards at Invicta Barracks. What a wonderful group of soldiers we have there. I proudly opened the extensive new premises in the High Street for Madam. As you know, that's Making a Difference to Maidstone. It's a charity supporting the homeless, those in addiction, socially isolated, disadvantaged, anyone in crisis in the Maidstone area. I then discovered a hidden gem in our countryside when I visited a Christmas arts fair at Maidstone Arts Centre at Marlpit Farm in Bolton, Monchelsea, Councillor Munford. You probably know it well. It's a not-for-profit community interest group, and it does art classes and workshops to bring anyone in our community along at low cost, all ages. I did spend a small fortune there, but it does go to a good cause. So, good cause. How inspiring and reassuring it is that our borough has the support and benefit of such dedicated, committed people, be they teachers, volunteers, whoever. So suffice it to say, I've been very active. I've enjoyed meeting and talking to mayors and chairmen across the county. And I close by wishing all them and everyone here, members and officers, a Merry Christmas. Now let's crack on with our meeting, shall we? That brings us on to item 10, I believe. I don't believe we have any petitions this evening. Am I correct in saying that? Yes, indeed I am. Jolly good. We now have question and answer session for members of the public. And Mr. Steve Healy, I've received notification that you wish to ask a question of the Chairman of the Policy and Resources Committee. Over to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is to the Chairman of the Policy and Resources Committee. And the question is, Mr. Cornell informed the Policy and Resources Committee on the 24th of November that a preliminary business case for the proposed new railway station at Heathlands had been submitted to the local planning authority and it was in the public domain. Can you confirm where this business case is published, please?
Over to you, Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I regret to have to respond and say that I have checked with the officer and he has confirmed that he was mistaken in terms of the information that he gave to the Policy and Resources Committee on the 24th of November, and it is not published in the database.
Mr. Healy, did you want to ask a supplementary at all?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. It's another example of the Council's secrecy and failure to be transparent on this project. It's a key piece of evidence, the local plan review, as it was submitted in September.
Not a question, thank you, Mr. Healy. May I have a question, please?
The question is, how can residents make reasoned representations without this evidence available for the local plan review?
Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, in fairness to the officer, I think it is worth me stating that this submission was indeed really quite voluminous, the submission in relation to Heathens, including that information. In terms of the preliminary rail business case, this was in fact commissioned and funded by Homes England rather than the council. And I am aware that there is a process underway to seek whether it's appropriate to release that information.
Thank you, Mr. Healy. Thank you, Councillor Burton. I have no questions from members of the public, but we're on to questions from council members. I'm on item 12. I've received notification that Councillor Mrs. Grigg wishes to ask a question to the Chairman of the Policy and Resources Committee. Councillor Mrs. Grigg, would you like to do so?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I note with positive interest the Council's call to landowners for suitable areas to be considered as part of its ambitious tree planting project. This is in line with the Biodiversity and Climate Change Action Plan to increase biodiversity and combat climate change and assist the Borough in reducing its carbon footprint. This is a vital step for the Council and one that every member will support. In public, particularly on social media, Maidstone residents have rightly been very vocal on pointing out the irony of this call for sites against the Council's local plan review and the planned destruction of acres of trees and woodland that will be necessary to accommodate listed site applications. People in Lidsing, Heathlands and Tovel have commented on how this will affect their areas. Indeed, the inclusion of the site at Beacons Park in Coxheath that threatens the anti-coalescent belt of my own ward in Lewes will mean the destruction of 6.8 hectares of orchard to allow for planned development. It makes me wonder if the right hand of the Council is aware of the actions of the left hand. I am concerned that the overall number of trees in the borough will be considerably less post-review. Can I please request that direction is given to work out the actual net gains and losses of trees and that members of this council are advised of the figures as soon as the call for sites exercise is completed? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grigg. Councillor Burton, would you like to respond, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Mrs. Grigg, I think it's really good that you give us some focus on this. If the right hand of the council is the one that is balancing need and the left hand of the council is weighing harm, then I think there is an ongoing process of us all having to consider it and communicate that balance between need and harm. But more specifically in relation to trees, you're concerned that the overall number at the end of this local plan process will be lower than that which we start. No, I'm confident we will have more trees. And as a simple example, our Councillor Mumford seems to be getting all the credit tonight, but look at what's happened at Borkman Chelsea, the tree planting that's going on there, and I think that's a beginning of an ongoing planting exercise, by no means the end of a project. There's lots of gain to be had. Requesting a calculation of the actual net gains and the losses. Well, I've sort of sat and thought about it. Actually, that is the output of the planning application process, because although there might be an allocation of sites, the actual style and delivery will be per application. And I think we're all aware that we now have to consider net gain as a calculated aspect. This is given to us through the national planning policy. I have a slight fear on two counts that calculation of that gain as a hard number will spawn a whole industry driven by development to give a nice answer. If government demand a minimum of 10%, we're going to see applications that claim 30% plus, but how do you calculate this? So I think we've got to be very wary on accepting, those numbers at face value. And one of the planning training events that I attended online during the last year or so, I can't remember exactly what it was, did discuss this. And the one thing that really sticks in my mind is that net gain is not a substitute for loss. We want net gain, but just because you plant 1,000 trees over there doesn't mean you can demolish an inconvenient oasis in the middle of a development. So, net gain is not a substitute for outright loss. So I think we've got a lot of work to do to understand this. I think there's a new tranche of policy making that we need to be involved with, which we know that SPY Committee are committed to doing. But you raise a very interesting area, and I welcome any supplementary question.
Councillor Grigg, do you want to have a supplementary question?
Thank you. Thank you for your comprehensive answer. And I'd just like to finish off by saying that if this council is really committed to reducing its carbon footprint, can I please ask that full consideration is given to the loss of trees as an important factor when sites come forward to the Planning Committee? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. I've received notification that Councillor Cox...
No, hang on. He hasn't responded to the question yet.
I beg your pardon, Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be very brief and to give my reassurance that, yes, we do expect to see that loss quantified and whatever is going to be given by way of improvement equally quantified so we can make balanced planning judgments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. Do you know, it really does pay for everybody to pay attention this evening because clearly the chairman isn't always as on the ball as she should be. So thank you very much for your attention. Now then, it is you, Councillor Cox. You wish to ask a question of the chairman of the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. For the purposes of transparency and in order to reassure the residents of Maidstone that their comments on the local plan review are valued and have been given proper consideration, can I please request that post-Reg 19, all alterations, omissions and submissions resulting from the public consultation will be published for review with an explanatory summary.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and thank you very much, Councillor Cox. I'm very well aware that whilst you were leader of the council, you worked alongside Councillor Grigg and obviously the previous chairman of Strategic Planning and Infrastructure in a very transparent and non-partisan way to develop a local plan that was most acceptable. So in that spirit, the answer to your question is yes. There is absolutely every intention to publish everything that you've mentioned. That's certainly my intention, and the committee has given me no instruction otherwise, so that is precisely what we will do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Cox, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you very much. Very simply, can we make sure this is signposted up front and centre on our website once this moment arrives? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cox. Let's move on to item 13. Right, are we all set to move on to item 13, which is current issues, report of the leader of the council and the response of the group leaders and any questions from council members. So let's call upon the leader of the council to submit his report on current issues.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members, it's the very last month of 2021 and perhaps it's the norm to reflect for a moment on the year now drawing to a close. Upon the challenges that we met and faced and continue to face from COVID, on the seemingly impossible task of planning the growth of our borough, on how frontline services kept delivering and working for residents even when skilled, experienced people to do just that are in short supply. A moment to reflect on the perception of the public towards their elected servants. It's become increasingly challenging and confrontational at times. To reflect upon the increasing focus of mankind's impact on our world. But I do not think that we should just be looking back at the last year. Of course, there are always lessons to learn from the past, but there is far more ahead of us that waits still to be learned. Some of us will distantly recall past decades when inflation was a moving feast, and it is now clear to all of us that we face a new period of its return, born from different circumstances perhaps, but it is in fact an opportunity to readjust earnings against living costs. How can we embrace it, outsmart it, leave it behind once more, but as a better balanced society? What influence in that process can we have as a council? The boundary review. Now, this will challenge us significantly over the next year or so. As I sat yesterday to gather these words in preparation, I had no idea of the outcome of the vote tonight at the extraordinary meeting. Our decision made earlier will terrifically influence the outcomes. Turkeys don't vote for Christmas, they say. Forgive me, that's the only seasonal quip you're getting. But I believe that a smaller, more efficient council will deliver better for our residents. Although the boundary review is necessary smoothing of democratic balance and fairness in the voting system, I do not believe that it goes anywhere near far enough, and we should begin a fundamental review of local government structure. What nonsense we have in the two-tier system operated here. Oh, to have planning and highways in the same office. How much better would we serve our residents? Are we prepared to embrace radical change, self-elimination, to serve our residents better? This will be difficult, challenging, and right here and now, I do not see exactly how it can be accomplished. But deep down, I know that it is the right thing to pursue. There are some that think differently and are content to leave things unchallenged. I, for one, cannot console myself to this. Just because it has not been possible to find a path to move forwards in the past does not mean that that path does not exist. New commitment, new vision, new energy will reveal new possibilities. I'm committed to working with our MPs, our colleagues across district boundaries and fellow councillors at county to rethink the past and find that better way of working for the future. I don't mind if you call this devolution, unitarisation, or as I do, just plain common sense. I recommit myself to this in the new year to seek out possibilities to bring back to our chamber for your wider consideration. I cannot pass this evening without referring to the ambition for this council to bring forward in its own right 1,000 affordable homes for local people. 1,000 is perhaps just a beginning, and I place on record my appreciation for the cross-party support expressed for this. Our officers have already developed initial optioning for the various routes to delivery, and this work is ready to be shared over the next few weeks to build our understanding so that collectively we can steer its fulfilment. I perhaps unreasonably press for urgent delivery of the first tranche, and I hope that you will share that objective too. Not recklessly so, but let's get on and deliver. So, in closing this speech, let me also record my thanks to each of you as fellow councillors for your service to our communities, and my thanks to our officers and staff for their tireless support and hard work delivering service to our residents. And our thanks to you, Madam Mayor, for being the exuberant, enthusiastic first citizen of our borough, constantly promoting Maidstone to be seen and known far and wide as the county town of Kent, the business capital of Kent. And whilst remembering colleagues who are unable to be with us this evening, I wish you all a safe festive season, a Merry Christmas and a happy and prosperous New Year.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burton. I now call upon the other group leaders to respond. You each have 5 minutes, and I believe the first up is Councillor English, the leader of the Liberal Democrat group.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will refrain from too many seasonal quips. The speech that the leaders just made, I think I can agree with almost everything he said. I wouldn't quite share his enthusiasm for equating efficiency with the smallest number of elected representatives in any particular forum that you can possibly pick. I would say that there is a tendency in Britain to say that the fewer elected people there are, the better, and to just say quantity, a slow quantity equals quality. We have the fewest elected representatives of any Western democracy. I wonder why we put such a low value on that sometimes. Having said that, we as a council and our officers have, I think, regardless of the numbers that we will have in the future going forward or have at the moment, coped, I think, quite well with some of the stresses and strains of the last few years. Our staff in particular have faced some very unusual situations over the last couple of years and have risen tremendously to the challenge, as have many organisations in the community, some of which the Mayor referred to earlier. It is humbling as an elected representative to see the work of the voluntary sector and our council staff faced with these difficult times. The times are not necessarily going to get easier more quickly than... Well, they're not going to get easier quickly, unfortunately. I wish they would, but wishing doesn't necessarily get you anything. What I would say is that sometimes when you do get a very difficult situation, the silver lining is that you look at things more clearly, and you, as a councillor or an officer, can look at the challenges ahead of you and think with perhaps a greater clarity than one would normally have. We face some very interesting times going forward, yes, and I do mean that in the Chinese sense of the word interesting, some real challenges. I think will find it quite difficult to meet those, but I am confident across the chamber, politically across the chamber and with our staff, that we will rise to those challenges. If David, as leader of the council, is looking at, with a blank piece of paper, at devolution proposals, I certainly will rule nothing out. I will look at that in the light of practical opportunities and also look at any disbenefits that might arise. So we will not be precious about that on our benches here. We will look at that pragmatically and try and find the best way forward for Maidstone. In terms of the laudable ambition to deliver 1,000 plus, I think 1,000 was the starting point rather than the finishing point of affordable homes, genuine affordable homes. We must deliver that. We must make sure that those voluntary organisations, those charities that deliver real social housing, like almshouses and cooperatives, are not just an afterthought but are involved in the actual core of that decision making going forward, and that we deliver something. I do think there is a slight contradiction with the local plan aspirations, if you can call them that, on affordable housing in the town centre, but which are not what I would like to see. But in terms of the direct investment policy, fine. But we obviously will be approaching that with open hearts and minds and hoping that we can come to something that really moves us forward as a borough and the public, and actually does get a real, genuine affordable housing, because frankly, the current approach of the government and previous governments has not delivered that. It's delivered some really quite poor housing and lots of executive housing, but it hasn't done a lot to deliver real affordable housing. I'll close by saying that some of the things the Mayor alluded to in terms of Loch Meadow are only a start. Cross-party, we have to work to make Maidstone a destination, because do not be forward. The one thing we can be sure with the economy post-COVID, if we get to post-COVID, is that retailing no longer is enough by itself to give you a viable town centre or village centres. We need to do very much more to create and sustain an economy, and we on this side will work with anyone to achieve that.
Thank you, Councillor English. I now call upon Councillor Munford, leader of the Independent Group. Councillor Munford.
Often I will decline this opportunity because I am staunchly independent. How can I speak for my group? How can I lead my group? And so, therefore, I will often decline this opportunity. What I will say is that we remain very supportive of the 1,000 affordable housing project aim, and I can do that with confidence. What I would like to say to the leader, he's looking forward. I'd like to look forward, and I would like him, as the leader of the council, to carry on listening to every member of this council and look for them to be involved in this council. We are all trying to achieve the same end, and we should look at it as a group. Could we look at it as a happy little group? Wouldn't that be fantastic? I would also like to join with the leader to thank the Mayor and the officers for their work for the past 12 months and wish everyone a fantastic festive period. I'm sure my group members would agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Munford. I now turn to Councillor Cox, the leader of the Maidstone Group.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and standing for the first time and talking to you as leader of the Maidstone Group. Hello. After listening to the leader's speech, I'm going to go in reverse order. With your 1,000 homes, we do join with you and will support this, but we see it as a marathon, not a sprint to May. This is going to take time to get the right things in the right place and for the right people. Those people may be our residents now, but more than likely they will be our future residents or children of our residents. So it has to be done right. You mentioned about the unitary solution, that I know that as soon as you stepped in to the seat, you were there with the other group leaders or the other leaders of the other districts that are in the North Kent group. I sat with them as you have, and I am pleased to hear that you're continuing on to examine the best way forward for the county town and how that will fit within the rest of the county and what comes forward from that. With interest, we watch to see. You mentioned the boundary review and smaller is more efficient. Well, as we approach Christmas, and you mentioned the inflation, we hope the inflation is just around our waists and not so quickly as the Bank of England might infer that inflation might hit us. But this is what the horizon may look like, and I think the caution with which we spoke about at Policy and Resources is prudent. And I know that brings me nicely on to say that our financial director obviously has listened. The rest of the officers and the chief executive have been working hard, certainly for this first half of the year, and we look forward to the rest of the 6 months. And we from the Maidstone Group would like to wish everybody here a Merry Christmas, but as you have the break over Christmas, to all our staff and officers, we hope you have a peaceful one and not a flooded one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cox. I now call upon Councillor Harper, leader of the Labour Group.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Looking at the unitary idea first of all, you never know, look, perhaps in a few years' time this may be our own chamber of an enlarged Maidstone Council or some other type of unitary setup if we do move over to single-tier local government. unlike probably most people here, I actually was a councillor for a unitary when I was in London, and there was the benefits of seeing all the services under one authority. So we covered everything from libraries, adult social services, education, highways, planning, and leisure and so on. And it did work better. It was easier to make decisions and strategic decisions for our community. And it may well be that a similar approach may well work for us, perhaps in Kent. Obviously, there's a lot of work clearly to be done before we get to that situation. So I think if, from our side, we would be quite open to having discussions with yourself in terms of looking at what the future may present for us. That brings me on to the boundary review, which you referred to earlier, and obviously you did mention the issue of 4 yearly elections, where we need to beg to differ on our views on that. I think tonight we will be discussing the boundary review in more detail, so I'll leave that until then. The 1,000 homes, yes, you had my commitment from my group at the last meeting when you mentioned it, and we want to work really hard with yourselves to bring it through to delivery. I know in January we'll be looking at reports, and as I said yesterday, I was talking to the Chief Executive, we would like to see a situation where prior to March that we've actually perhaps finalised the delivery plan and the way we take it forward, because I think we need to get it started. The needs out there in our community for decent housing at an affordable rate are really important, and that links into the town centre. Looking at opportunities, the town centre plan gives us a chance to meld all of these actions together, to meld in a lot of your aspirations and the aspirations not only of yourselves, but I think everybody in this chamber, to create a better Maidstone, and one everyone's going to be proud to live in, and to actually recognise the culture and the history of this town, and to get it working for us all. One thing I suppose tonight I can't resist, I'm afraid, is obviously you mentioned about COVID, and obviously today we've had in Parliament rather a disappointing situation. We're now moving...
Relevant, Councillor Harper.
Sorry?
Please stick to the speech given by our dear leader. Thank you.
Well, he did mention COVID challenges, so what I was going to say was we might ask our Prime Minister about it. Anyway, I would terminate then. I'd just like to thank everybody, and especially all our staff, for keeping Maidstone going over the last year. It's been the second difficult year following 2020, and we can't but say enough in terms of thank you to yourselves. And also I'd like to wish every happiness to all my fellow councillors here. We don't always agree, but I think we've all got Maidstone at our heart, and I'd hope everybody will have a good festive season, including the Mayor, who has a little tipple sitting by her desk, which is a present from the Labour group. So thank you, everybody, and have a good Christmas.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. Thank you for the gift. It remains unopened until I get home. Okay, members, I will now open up this item to questions from all of you for a period of 15 minutes. So who would like to speak first? Oh, look at Deathly Hush filled the room. Oh, members, now come along. I mean, I know the issues need to relate to what the leader has been speaking about, or even the other group leaders, but I think I'm going to move on to item 14. Gone. Agreed, we move on to item 14. Okay, so we report on item 14. I call upon Councillor Cooper to move the recommendation of the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee relating to the Local Development Scheme 2021 to 24. The recommendation you will find on page 21.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Members, I move the recommendations in relation to the Local Development Scheme as laid out in your papers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cooper. Is that seconded? Oh, Councillor Simon Webb. Now, would anybody like to speak? Councillor Rose, was your hand up or not? No, you were just drawing pictures in the air. That's very nice, dear. It is Christmas. Would anybody like to speak? No. Councillor Cox, are you part of this? Or is something cooking? Okay. Right. Well, in that case, is the recommendation agreed, members? Lovely. Moving on to item 15, the report of the Licensing Committee. I call upon Councillor Springett to move the recommendation relating to the Gambling Act 2005, Statement of Licensing Principles Policy 2022 to 25. You'll see the recommendation on page 42. Over to you, Councillor Springett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I understand that actually there's a few typos and presentational errors that have been discovered since the agenda was published. So in addition to the recommendation on page 42 of your papers, I would like to also move that delegated authority is given to the head of licensing to correct these minor errors within the policy document. And I therefore move that the Gambling Act 2005 Statement of Licensing Principles Policy 2022 to 2025 as attached at Appendix 1 to the report be agreed. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Springett. Is that recommendation seconded?
Yeah, Councillor Joy.
Thank you, Councillor Joy, you seconded. Thank you very much indeed. Is there anybody that would like to speak on this recommendation? In that case, I move that the recommendation is agreed. Thank you very much, members. Moving on to item 16, report of the Democracy and General Purposes Committee, 23rd of November. You'll see it on page 102, but I call upon Councillor Pearl to move this recommendation relating to the local government boundary review, the council size submission. Over to you, Councillor Pearl.
Madam Mayor, this is a splendid report. Behind it sits a major piece of work by our Democratic Services Manager and the team, as well as contributions from many members in this chamber, and I beg to move the motion on the papers.
Thank you, Councillor Pearl. Is that seconded? Lovely. Thank you, Councillor English. Harper.
Yes, I'd like to move an amendment to the motion, please. I think officers have written copies of it to hand out. While they're doing that, I'll just read out what it says. And it will be of no surprise, I should think, to anybody. So it's to amend the recommendation to add that the council size submission document as attached to the Appendix A to the reference be approved to the council's formal submission to the Local Government Boundary Commission for England as part of the council's local development boundary review, subject to the replacement of the size submission of 48 by 54. That the submission document be amended to reflect the proposal for 54 councillors. Now, as I say, I'm sure that's no surprise to anybody. My group's been arguing for a council size of 54 for a while. I'd just like, in moving this, to just say a few words. So current council size of 55 was determined back in 1974 when the council was established and when our population was only 121,000 people. However, since that time, and especially since the start of the 21st century, there's been a big rise in our population, which now stands at 171,800, an increase of 42%, or over 50,000 since the borough was formed. And indeed, it's estimated in this document referred to earlier to be about 193,000 by 2033. That means that if we use the ratio to determine 55 councillors back in 1974 and prorated it up, the council size now would be 78. We feel the submission fails to reflect that more of the work of a councillor is to be a representative and community leader than just attending formal council meetings, which, and I'm sure a lot of you would agree, probably takes under half of your time as a councillor. Most of your time is spent on working with officers, outside meetings, working with your colleagues, working with residents and so on. And a large part of the role of a borough councillor in an urban, non-parished ward, and I can only speak as a councillor in an urban ward, is to be a community leader, speaking on behalf and leading their local community. This is a very important role, and one which requires councillors, as I think Councillor Mumford earlier said, to represent discrete communities and discrete areas. If we had a council of 54, then that, we believe from the Labour side, could still be achieved. But we feel with a reduction to 48 members, that the natural communities in the borough would be lost, and councillors would lose the coherence of the people they represent. In the parished areas, the arguments obviously are slightly different because you have a parish council to represent your communities, which we don't in the urban parts of the town. So we believe that to go below 54 councillors would be wrong. We believe it would overburden remaining councillors, break the link of community representative and leader, and mean that there is a disconnect between residents and elected representatives, which we already see with county councillors. So I move the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. I have a seconder.
I definitely second that and completely agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rose. I have two councillors who wish to speak. Yes? Please go ahead.
It's established sort of understanding that Rule 20.6 provides that an amendment cannot negate a motion. The motion that I moved is not merely to tell the local boundary commission that the council wishes to have 48 councillors. It is to tell the council that we wish to have 48 councillors on the basis of a substantial exercise and evidence basis. The amendment replaces that submission with a quite different rationale and so forth. And I would therefore suggest, ma'am, that the amendment is out of order.
Thank you. I understand that's something Councillor English was going to raise. One moment, I would like to approach our legal advisor. One moment, please.
The question depends, as you've heard me say before, the question depends on how much the evidence base would require rewriting to fulfil what is being asked of it. And as in previous matters where I've deferred to the professional officer that would need to do that rewriting, if I could ask Mr. O'Connell if that would be a possibility without finding a level of new evidence within a very short time that negates the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Oh, take this off, actually. Oh, that's quite... Thank you, Madam Mayor. It is on. The light's not on, but the mic is on. So, thank you, Madam Mayor. The evidence includes all the exercises we went through with councillors. It includes some background information. None of that background information would need to change. But when we went through the exercise with the councillors, we did consider 54 as one of the numbers. So it would be possible to do a rewrite of the evidence. But I think council would need to bear in mind that the delegation that it would be giving me is to rewrite that however I saw it to be fit to achieve that 54. So I would say I don't personally think it negates the motion, but it would be a case of the council effectively write me a blank cheque to decide what that evidence is in order to meet the 54, and it's up to council when it votes whether or not that's a position it wants to put itself in.
Given the advice, I'd like to hear people speak, please. I'll go for Councillor English, and then I've got Councillor Blackmore.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hopefully we can resolve this without too much constitutional difficulty, because I felt that when we had the seminars on this, there was a fair degree of support, not unanimous, but a fair degree of support cross-party for the figure we arrived at. I have a lot of sympathy for the basic thrust of Councillor Harper and the Labour Group's thoughts, but you have to look at how the Boundary Commission actually works. It is not true to say there are no councils that have managed to maintain or increase their numbers. In fact, I was looking at one the other day, which is Lancaster City Council, which managed to maintain its level of 60 councillors, albeit on different ward boundaries, as a result of the draft advice from the Local Government Boundary Commission. However, this was based on a very, very exceptional case. For those of you who know that particular part of the country, it is a significantly large geographical area with very, very diverse communities. And it was an exception which had a lot of work put into it, a lot of work and a lot of argument. What we would be doing if we went down the route of the amendment is trying to produce an evidence base which cuts very much against the way that the Local Government Boundary Commission works in a very short period of time to meet a timetable which they're not going to move very much on our behalf. Whilst I maintain my position of some scepticism about the overall validity of 4-yearly elections, it does simplify the task of writing the Boundary Commission submission at least. So it's not all bad news. I would say that we really do need to realise that we do not have a massive amount of time and we do not have massive amount of evidence to overturn the argument that we came to. There is a very big risk that if we don't defend a position that is robust and defensible, that we will go down the path and we won't be looking at a reduction of 7 councillors, but we were looking at more like what happened in Folkestone and Hythe, which was a really radical reduction of 20. Now, I don't want to frighten the horses, but we actually do need to try and defend a position that is defensible, like Rorke's Drift, rather than marching into the middle of a South African savannah and get massacred because we don't have a defensible position. So I would appeal to members, whatever their politics, to try and be realistic, to aim for what is achievable. And yes, I really would like a council of 60, but I'm not going to get it. I would prefer 48 to 34.
Thank you very much, Councillor English. Councillor Annabel Blackmore, next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Harper, since 1974, I think we've had what's known as the digital revolution. You'll probably find that in 1974, the council had a whole series of people within what was known as a typing pool who would write letters. Since then, the world has evolved massively, and I think that has enabled all of us to probably deal with more people far more quickly than we could have done 30, 40 years ago. That said, I think if we were to decrease from 55 to 54, I think the Boundary Commission would absolutely laugh us out of town. You may as well stay at 55. Why go to the bother of actually submitting a submission to the Boundary Commission? Personally, I think 48 is too large. I would go for a lower number, possibly 42, 39, but maybe Councillor English would call that a massacre on the savannah. So I think let us leave the report where it is. You did bring this to democracy. We did debate it at the time at great length, if I remember. And my understanding is you also debated this within the working groups too. So I really do think that 54 has had its day, and let's be allowed to just send this report to the Boundary Commission, please.
Thank you, Councillor Blackmore. I have Councillor Bryce.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You talked earlier about democracy. Many of us spent many evenings discussing this, and we took a vote within that working group, and it is a working group, so it's not legally binding in any way, shape or form in the same way this meeting was. But it's very clear at that meeting, incredibly clear, that 48, if not even slightly lower, but that 48 was the kind of upper limit. So to come here tonight and ask us to change our minds when we've gone through that process, I do find quite undemocratic. Many thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. I now have Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was somewhat disappointed by Councillor Harper's comments about the perceived disconnect between county councillors and the public. My understanding is that Councillor Harper is represented by two of Kent's finest county councillors, Councillor Cannon and Councillor Daly. Therefore, I think that is excellent evidence that indeed councillors can indeed represent more residents than we currently do in this chamber. Therefore, I propose that we move to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Did anybody else wish to speak? We'll move to the vote. Let's move to the vote. Oh, go on then.
I think on our side we recognise that we're unlikely to be successful tonight. But what we believe is that the Boundary Commission will listen to the widest level of debate, and to get, as Clive was saying and others, to your 48 figure, there needs to be some evidence that higher figures and lower figures were also considered in the public arena. Because otherwise, if it just goes through as 48 without us raising the issue, I imagine our council will end up, now we've abolished the third requirement, to an authority of perhaps 30, 31, 32, which I know would be where the leader would be looking for it to fall at. But, we do believe we need the largest council we can do. And, as I say, the Working Party was a self-selected group of people who turned up, so I think it wasn't necessarily representative of everybody. And I just ask the question of how many borough councillors here receive lots of issues which are Kent County Council remit, but they contact you as their local councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. We do need to move to the vote now. All those in favour of the amendment, please show. Okay, thank you. That's 3. All those against? Thank you very much. The amendment falls, I'm afraid. Therefore, I think we can go to the substantive motion to vote thereon. Are you happy with that? Jolly good. Let's vote on the substantive motion, which was basically for 48. All those in favour of the substantive motion? Thank you very much. Can I have those against? Many against? No, that motion is carried. Thank you very much, members. You didn't take abstentions. Abstentions? Were there any? Thank you. Any more abstentions? Who's that? Councillor Pearl? Are you abstaining? Thank you. Okay. Yes, that's fine. Okay, let's move on, shall we? That motion is carried. Thank you very much indeed. Let's move on to, I think we're on item 17 now. No, we're not going to have it. No, we're going to carry on. I call upon Councillor Burton to move the recommendation of the Policy and Resources Committee relating to the council tax reduction scheme, and the recommendation is on page 137.
In the matter of renewing our support for the council tax reduction scheme, as the Mayor just reminded you, the recommendations are found on page 137, and I so move.
Oh dear. Thank you, Councillor Burton. Is that seconded? Councillor Bryce has seconded. Thank you very much. Did anybody wish to speak on this item, or can we just go to the vote? Thank you, members. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Can you now show if you are against? Thank you. Are there any abstentions? None. That motion has been carried. Thank you very much indeed. The next item is item 18. I don't believe there's any oral report from the Communities, Housing and Environment Committee on this occasion. Therefore, I move to item 19. Oral report of the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee held on the 7th of December. There is no oral report, no such report. Therefore, we move on to item 20, which is the Local Plan Review Regulation 19 Consultation and Sustainability Appraisal of the Local Plan Review Regulation 19 Pre-Submission Consultation. I call upon, let me have a minute to look at this. Councillor Mrs. Sams, you wish to move your motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, members. In moving this motion, I will not overcook this, but just explain as clearly as I can why I've brought this motion forward. We are in exceptional circumstances, and I think all members know that the consultation obviously is vital. It's an extremely important consultation which will shape and influence the borough and the borough's future for many years. It will have a significant impact on health, wealth and well-being for many of our residents. It is not a party political issue. It is about allowing residents, all our residents, our parish councillors, stakeholders, a full and equal opportunity to have meaningful input into the process. The consultation is about as complicated as it can be. It's the magnitude and significance of it. We have thousands of papers of information to read, analyse, digest, and then from that, hopefully, write a response. The language used is difficult for many who are not used to such documents. It will put many people off. It is in a sort of foreign language to a lot of people. It's overwhelming to the majority of our residents. And it's extremely difficult to complete. We're expecting residents to do it online and on time. For those not online, it's even more difficult, and they will not get the opportunity to read all the documents. Maybe some would say that's discriminatory. Then if you look at the time frame we've given our residents, 6 weeks. Dog Control Public Space Protections 2018, we gave 8 weeks and 2 days. The Draft Housing Strategy, we gave 7 weeks. The future use of Archbishop's Palace this year, we gave 7 weeks, 3 days. Swale Borough Council, our partner and neighbouring authority on many fronts, their local plan review Regulation 19 pre-submission consultation was the 8th of February to the 30th of April, more than 11 weeks. I don't want to go back to the last consultation, 18B, but when we gave three more weeks, this was in the middle of high infection rates from COVID. Last week, Kent saw the second highest infection rate in the country, and new cases are currently 5,000 cases per day, higher than on December 22nd last year, when the consultation of Reg 19 was extended. We know there's been many requests by parish councils and other groups to extend the consultation to January the 4th. In practical terms, this is entirely possible. I think entirely reasonable. It will be seen as entirely churlish not to do so. We sincerely hope that councillors will be reasonable and understand what we have before us. Please look at these few days that it will not be days that will be lost, but what will be gained in the long term by residents appreciating councillors' understanding on this occasion. Please support the motion. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Janetta Sams. That motion is seconded. Councillor Tom Sams? Yes? Yes.
Thank you. We'll try and be brief. It's been going to be a long night. members, Lenham Parish Council wrote, an extension will allow the Parish Council to canvass its residents more thoroughly to provide a considered and detailed response to the consultation. We think this is imperative to allow residents this additional time. They continued, we would suggest extending the consultation until the week commencing the 4th of January, which would allow residents to give the time over the holiday period to formulate their responses. Given it is unlikely that officers will be in a position to work on responses immediately prior to and over Christmas period, we do not believe that this will delay the Council's local plan timetable, but will ensure the residents are not left with the impression that this is simply a tick box exercise and that you are generally interested in the views of the public, stakeholders and statutory consultees. This council, Maidstone Borough Council, wrote back and said, thank you for your correspondence relating to local plan review. Your comments will be reviewed and will be treated as representations with others we received during the normal formal consultation period. Now, you can see how that looks, not only curt and unhelpful, but also saying thank you for your representation and thank you for completing our tick box exercise. The fact that Harwich Parish Council, Bredhurst Parish Council, Boxley and Lenham, I expect they all got the same responses. The fact that those areas are covered by significant potential increase in housing is no accident, and Heathlands and Liston Garden Communities proposals, do take an awful lot of looking through and digesting of additional information. What I'd like to say is the electorate has the opportunity to see councillors doing the right thing, collectively for the common good, for fairness, to give residents a choice. I do not accept that any arguments that can be made not to grant this. A Harwich resident wrote, the Maidstone Borough Council website is incredibly confusing. I'm used to dealing with information and usually I can find my way through the mire, but I do think that many will just give up. Finally, there are many residents who we are fairly certain would appreciate more time. I expect some even in this hall privately would appreciate it. Please support the motion and please be fair to give residents the chance to take part in this consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sands. I consider it is convenient and conducive to the dispatch of business that this motion is dealt with by the Council today, this evening. A factual briefing note has been circulated. I have 3 councillors to speak, opening the debate. First of all, I have Councillor Cooper, then Councillor English, then Councillor Rose. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Members, this is indeed the 3rd consultation on this local plan review. And this is a timetable for the local plan which has been previously discussed and debated by members of the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee and indeed this full council. I do not accept Councillor Tom Sands' statement that it will make no difference to the timeline. Indeed it will. Not an insignificant number of responses have already been received. Working in the processing of these responses has to be done in a timely fashion so that we do not cause any delay. There are 2 significant risk factors here. The first is that we will fall over on our 5-year housing land supply, which will bring us planning by appeal. You may shake your head, indeed, Councillor Tom Sands, but I can assure you this is a serious consequence of your proposed actions. But there is a second, much more concerning potential course of action, and that would be that the delay caused by this would push us into the new municipal year, which would mean that we would have to find another 1,200 units to put onto this local plan review. We would have to go back to the drawing board. We would certainly fall over on our 5-year housing land supply, and I don't think that this council wishes to find another 1,200 units for this local plan. Therefore, I urge all members not to vote for the extension of what is indeed the 6-week period, which is deemed perfectly suitable by the Secretary of State. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor English.
I've given this a lot of thought over the last few days. My parish council, I returned to Tovel Parish Council after an absence of some years, as indeed has Councillor Mortimer, are really struggling to getting a response by Sunday night. Tovel is not as badly affected as many other parish councils, but we've just received, literally a couple of days ago, a very significant document from the Kent Association of Local Councils, who only discussed their position a few days ago. Many parish councils and other organisations are finding this quite difficult with the timeline. It might have been easier, probably would have been easier, if there hadn't been so much disruption of one kind or another in the past few years. But we as a parish council in Tovel aren't meeting on the normally monthly basis that we were in the past. We're actually meeting on a more quarterly basis. This is not unsurprising or uncommon with a lot of third-tier authorities at the moment. It's actually quite difficult. I looked at the briefing note. It doesn't actually say quite what Councillor Cooper said. If it is quite such a risk, I would have expected it to say that. My personal view is that there hasn't been a lot of democratic involvement in this local plan. There's been far less than any local plan process I have ever seen or participated in, and I have participated along with Councillor Harwood in a great many of them. I've never seen such a process before. To be honest, I think that it is about time that we actually introduced a bit of democracy and allow people, which we talked about a lot this evening, frankly, the local plan making process, it's about as important a democratic process as you can have. At the moment, I think this council is actually in some danger, as the way it's approached it, of the whole process falling over whenever we get to it because of the way we've approached this in terms of democratic participation. And I really think it's about time we actually allowed a bit more. So I actually personally will be voting for the motion.
Thank you, Councillor English. Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We in the Labour Group support the motion. The local plan consultation deserves to be taken seriously. Extending the consultation to January 22 achieves this and will enable the widest range of views to be submitted, which is surely what democracy is all about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rose. Does anybody else wish to speak on this item? Thank you, Councillor Mackay. And then, did I see somebody else's? Oh, thank you very much. Got you. Thank you, Hinda. Councillor Mackay.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. When I read the proposed motion, I was inclined, yes, I would go along with that, unless someone could give me convincing evidence that we're tripping ourselves up. Now, the only slightest bit of evidence that Councillor Cooper's said that if we go into the next calendar year, municipal year, that is going into January, is that right? Then, sorry, I do not think your argument stands. So I would be inclined to support this motion. I was about to say, if it was calendar year, just alter the date to the 30th of December. No, I fully support your motion. We need to be seen to be democratic. I've got to say, I've looked online at this consultation. It is hard work. And I'm still getting emails from people giving me their views. And I have to go back and say, this is out of the hands of councillors now. You've got to go online. And I dread to think what they're going to say when they look online. Whatever. So, I fully support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Mackay. I now have Councillor Hinder.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Strange situation I find myself in, but the situation with regard to Boxley is that the residents of Boxley voted for me to become their councillor, for which I'm very grateful. But in return, I feel that it's extremely important that I listen to the views of my residents. By golly, over the past few months, those views have been coming in thick and fast. And they are still coming in. And if we're going to have and take notice of our communities, then I have to listen to those views. And I've listened very carefully to what you've had to say, Councillor Cooper. But I get, for instance, residents contacting me saying, well, we haven't got until December the 12th because, unfortunately, we haven't got the benefits of internet. So we have to still resort to the old-fashioned methods of pen, paper and post. And it's Christmas. So they're having to submit their findings and their wishes, their thoughts on this now, not the 12th. And I personally cannot see, the process being damaged significantly if we don't take into account the views of the residents and the overwhelming pressure that is being exerted on us councillors in Lenham, Lidsing, etc., and extended over the Christmas period. I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hinder. Councillor Cox.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Earlier on, I asked the Chair of SBI whether we can make all of the comments available to the public to show that they have been considered. And here we're being asked for additional time, and it's over Christmas. The only concern I have, and I really would like to know if we are able to ask the Director to see whether this will change the timeline. Because if it is, then that jeopardises every member of our borough, because development could come unhindered. But I need to hear that, if I may, because we don't have Mr. Coyne here. I wonder if Mr. Cornell would be able to... Oh, I would love to ask the Chief Exec if this was a thing, because I think it is important, because how many days over the Christmas period are our staff not going to be at work anyway? And so indeed, if we took those out, if we're really talking about 8 or 9 days of actual work time that it is affecting, I think we would be better to risk that than not get in all of the representation that we could from the residents that want to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm asking our Chief Executive.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, in answer to your question, the timetable is an incredibly tight one. As has already been indicated, it was very carefully considered before we made the recommendation to the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee, and before that recommendation was accepted and then subsequently presented to and debated by full council. And that took into consideration all the resources that we have and when we would be considering the responses. I think Councillor Cooper has already outlined the risk associated with disrupting that timetable. I don't think it's directly relevant for me to be answering questions about who will be working and who will be on leave, but I can tell you that we took into account all of those types of factors when we made the original recommendation. So I think really what you need to be balancing is the risks that have been described, essentially of delay in a very tight timescale that already is planned, and maybe reflect on some of the reasons why we were asked to work to such a tight timetable,
and that did include concern, risk, and I'd probably go as far as to say anxiety and fear that delay would cause a greater number of homes to be built, or we would have to consider a greater number of homes, because of the period of uncertainty around the algorithm. I know that's gone away now, but if we were to delay by even a small amount of time, we have to extend the period of the plan. That increases the number of homes. We need to go back and look at the evidence base. So it's all of those ramifications that were taken into consideration in the original local development scheme. I hope that assists you in some way in coming to a judgment for yourself. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, may I just caveat that? So the other thing that we don't know, which was the variable that was completely we're unaware of, is the number of consultations that we will get back and how long that will take to actually do. Now, if the big consultations from the groups who are representing a lot of people, if they're allowed to complete those as one unit, that may help by getting one big response back rather than 600 that people could put in. That was just, and I think the information you've given us, Chief Executive, thank you very much, because I think it's the more information we can all listen to before we take a vote. So that's the last thing I just wanted to question.
Okay, so I think it's impossible at this stage to estimate precisely how many responses we will receive. We know that in the previous phases of consultation, the number of responses has been very large. Up until now, we've received approaching 700. We know that there is a profile, if you like, in terms of you receive few responses at the beginning of a consultation period and they build up. So we have anticipated that pattern being repeated again. We know that we will be dealing with a significant volume and we have prepared for that, and our timetable reflects that preparation.
Thank you, Chief Exec. I have Councillor Garton.
Madam Mayor, in view of what the Chief Executive just said, I am very, very scared and have been all along through this review, very scared that we end up with planning by appeal. Together with the leader of the council, who was at the time the chairman of SPY, the two of us tried to convince the SPY committee at the time to do away with Regulation 18B against all the opposing parties. Had we done so, we would have had much more scope at this end. Unfortunately, we were not listened to at the time. We find ourselves where we are at a very, very tight schedule, and any delay is very high risk. I'm not willing to take that.
Thank you, Councillor Garton. I'm minded to go to the vote if there is no one else wishes to speak. Need to get Janetta the opportunity to sum up. I beg your pardon, Councillor Janetta Sams. Would you like to sum up, or is anybody else who wishes to speak? But first, I'll have Councillor Burton. Thank you, and then you can sum up. Okay.
I wasn't going to speak because I think this is such a clear-cut matter. Any delay increases the risk. The risk is that, colleagues, you'll be sat at a planning committee without a local plan. That's the risk. We can't dare go there. The current plan, that clock is on countdown now. You know, every hour we're in this chamber, every minute that goes by, the cover we've got from the current local plan is decreasing. Don't take that risk. And the Regulation 19 consultation is a technical consultation on soundness. If this was the only consultation in the process, I'd have more sympathy. But This is the last bit of consultation and it's technical. There's been plenty of consultation. We're backed into a corner. We don't want to deliver this plan and deliver these numbers. But if we fail, we do a terrible thing for this borough. Don't take the risk.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. I'm sorry, Councillor Sams. I understand that Councillor Brian Clark wishes to speak. So if you don't mind, I'll slot him in. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't planning to speak this evening on this either, but I think I should. I think it's very easy to say we would have had a really easy ride of this if we'd have taken out all consultation with the public. We could have got this over and done with. We would have not risked our 5-year housing supply. And guess what? We've got a local plan. I did not agree with us removing 18B, because 18B is the consultation where we go out, we ask for residents' feedback, and then we consider, as a borough, the residents' feedback, and we consider how we will adjust our local plan based on residents' feedback. The notion of going out just to Regulation 19, where we go to consultation, we gather the feedback, but we only gather it for the government inspector to have a look at it. It was absolutely not the right thing to do. And I was the person that proposed that we do go forward with 18B rather than straight to 19. And I'm very glad that we were able to do that, because many people that have talked this evening about extensions, their residents have actually had a great deal of consultation feedback coming into this council. We've been able to see it. We wouldn't have been able to have seen that if we went straight to 19. And I think that would have been a great shame. We talk about delay, but we don't really know until the 12th of December how much feedback we're going to get. And it might well be that we might get a deluge on the 11th. Could happen, we don't know at the moment. But the fact is, there's almost a subtext here that, if we get that big deluge, that might put the local plan at risk. Well, I don't think we should do anything to restrict the feedback from our residents, especially over Christmas, which is probably the best time where we could have an extension given holidays. So the idea that if we were to extend and we got no more feedback, then I think that would be a total waste of extension, because we'd be doing it for no other reason than an extension. If we're going to be delaying and we get lots of feedback, I think that puts us in a very good position as a council. I think that's what we want from our residents, isn't it? That's why I'm here. I hope that many other people are here for that purpose. So I think this is a good proposal, and I think we should be voting for it.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Sands, down to you to sum up. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for all those comments. And I'm heartened by what Councillor Hinder said, because that was part of what I was going to say about those people who are putting it in the post and obviously losing time. We've had a resident who looked at the local development scheme, which was adopted on the 14th of July, which showed that Regulation 19 will be October, November. Obviously, this has moved from that final date. And it's been pointed out by that resident that the SPI committee overseeing the local plan had no meetings from the 6th of July until the 21st of September, a period of 11 weeks, 77 days. And residents have commented further that perhaps if a meeting had been taking place on the 7th of September, this slippage may not have occurred. The resident commented that it should not impact them, and perhaps officers and the SPI leadership should take responsibility for not meeting for those 11 weeks. That resident said that it was ironic that councillors and officers have now put in an objection to residents, parish councils and councillors requesting an extension over the Christmas holiday period. At last night's SPI committee, we were told that there had been approximately 670, which has obviously been backed up by the Chief Exec today. But some of these are non-responses. Some of these are just clarifications or question responses, so that number's reduced. I believe we are heading for a sort of 30% of what we had for 18B at the moment. I think it's entirely wrong for the consultation process not to respond to the public's wish to additional time. And as Councillor Hinder said, we're elected to represent our residents. Residents want a caring, listening and compassionate council. give those residents the opportunity to take part. It is their borough and they deserve that opportunity and time to be listened to. We'll be asking for a named vote on this today because we want to ensure that if there's a significant section of the council opposed this a reasonable and simple request, that the public know who they are. And I'd ask once again, it is over the Christmas period. It isn't a very, if you look at the actual working days, there will be a lot of officers who won't be working over that period, and we'd hope they could have a nice long rest as well, and it will not massively impact on the timescale, and it will give residents that extra time to actually read the information and be able to give in a response and feel part of the local plan. Thank you, Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sands. We need more people. We need 5 people to request a named vote. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got the named vote. Thank you very much indeed. I'll hand over to our Chief Executive to carry out the named vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is on the motion that was proposed by Councillor Mrs Sams and seconded by Councillor Sams. So, can I start with Councillor Bartlett?
Against.
Councillor Blackmore?
Against.
Councillor Bryce?
Against.
Councillor Brindle?
For.
Councillor Bryant?
For.
Councillor Burton?
Against.
Councillor Cannon?
Against.
Councillor Clark?
For.
Councillor Coates? Councillor Cook? Councillor Cooper?
Against.
Councillor Cox? Councillor Cumming?
Against.
Councillor Daly has left. Councillor English? Councillor Eaves?
Against.
Councillor Fissenden? That's a vote for members who may not have been able to hear. And Councillor Forecast?
Against.
Councillor Fort?
Against.
Councillor Garton?
Against.
Councillor Gooch?
Against.
Councillor Grigg? For. Councillor Harper? Councillor Harwood?
For.
Councillor Hasty? For. Councillor Hinder?
For.
Councillor Holmes? Councillor Joy?
For.
Councillor Cadker?
For.
Councillor Kimmins? Councillor Mackay?
For.
Councillor McKenna?
Against.
Councillor Mortimer?
For.
Councillor Mumford? Councillor Nagy?
For.
Councillor Newton?
Against.
Councillor Parfitt-Reid?
Against.
Councillor Perry?
Against.
Councillor Pearl?
Against.
Councillor Robertson?
For.
Councillor Daniel Rose?
Against.
Councillor Margaret Rose? Councillor Round?
Against.
Councillor Russell?
Against.
Councillor Mrs Sams? Councillor Sams? Councillor Spooner?
Against.
Councillor Springett?
Against.
Councillor Tubinsky?
Against.
Councillor Webb.
Against.
Councillor the Wigan Shepherd has left. Councillor Young. Thank you. Somebody's added those up for me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22.
haven't written in that by now, they're not going to do it.
Members, quiet please.
So members, if I might have your attention for a moment. This is a simple majority vote. So the votes cast for were 22 and the votes cast against 28, which means that I'm afraid the motion falls.
Thank you. We now move on to the next motion, which is the garden waste bin service. And it's at this point, and I really regret that we didn't stop for coffee. But if we stop, that means that we're here for even longer. Now, is anybody really desperate for a quick break before we go on to... Okay, 2 minutes for Councillor Margaret. I won't name you. But make sure it's quick. Come on. And put the fire on while you're out there, please.
Madam Mayor, you have to understand that's why our county council meetings are so quick.
It's not. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask... I think it... Thank you. I'm going to ask our Chief Executive to take the register so that we continue the meeting with those people who we know are here. Too bad. Too bad.
Okay, members, if I might have your attention, please. Thank you. So when I read your name, if you're here, obviously say you're present. Get the hang of that? Okay. Right, come on then. So, I'm going to feel pretty stupid reading out names of people who aren't here, but I'm still going to do it. Anyway, so, Councillor Bartlett, Blackmore, Bryce, Brindle,
here,
Bryant, not here, Burton, Cannon,
Here.
Clark, Coates, Cook, Cooper, Cox, Cumming,
Present.
Daly, English, wait. Eves, Fissenden, Forecast, Fort, Garton,
Alive and awake.
Gooch,
Here.
Grigg, Harper, Harwood, Hasty, Hinder, Holmes, Joy.
I'm here.
Cabker, no. Kimmons, Mackay, McKenna, Mortimer, Munford, Nagy, Newton,
Present.
Parfitt Reed,
Present.
Perry,
Present.
Pearl, Robertson,
Present.
Daniel Rose, Margaret Rose, Round,
Present.
Russell, here, Janetta Sams, Tom Sams, Spooner,
Present.
Springett,
Present.
Trubinsky, Simon Webb, De Wigandine Shepherd, and Young. Present. Thank you.
I move the motion, which I assume will be remitted to Chi. Most of us, I'm sure, use the garden waste, and I just think the briefing note obviously has given us a lot of info, but it would just be worth getting clarity at Chi over how we've been responding to residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is an interesting motion, and like Captain Hindsight himself, I felt it's just a sort of couple of months too late. The Council's priority through the summer and the autumn was to keep the main household waste collection running in the face of dire national conditions, and this was largely successful. Now, the briefing note sets out some of the many steps that were taken to fill the shortage of drivers in some very tight national conditions. And I can tell you I had countless meetings with officers over recent months concerning this. As a result, though, we were able to avoid the outright suspension of garden waste services afflicting so many of the other councils in Kent before returning to 92% success last month. Now, for those who can't do maths, 92% success on fortnightly collections doesn't mean we're doing monthly collections. You take 14, you divide it by 0.92, and you get 15.22 days on average. In terms of communications with members, at the beginning of the summer, as the bin services were getting hit across Kent, I put a series of questions to senior officers, and in response they kindly circulated a very detailed Q&A to all the CHI members in terms of the resilience of the service and our contingency plans. Then, as things began to stabilise, I actually arranged a briefing before the CHI meeting on the 2nd of November to set out the actions the council had been taking. Sadly, I believe there was an event at Lockmeadow that evening giving away cheap Prosecco and free sausage rolls, so none of the members signing this notice of motion were able to attend that briefing. But that briefing did in fact do exactly what this motion now belatedly calls for. In terms of communications with residents, obviously it's only those residents who sign up for text alerts who get the text. Due to the tricky data protection rules, we aren't actually allowed to sort of spam them with updates. But the main reason most residents get a different message is because most residents have had different experiences. Some wards, some villages and streets have had different patterns of garden waste collections, and a missed garden waste bin sort of affects different people in different ways. In most cases, if a garden waste bin is not collected on one occasion, what happens is NBC then just collects that volume of waste at the next collection. It doesn't sort of get taken away by any of our competitors. The council still disposes it in the end for most people. Obviously, that's not convenient for everybody. So, there is that option to then complain and for residents to get a response that's based on their own experience. And that's sort of kind of how complaints work. As I say, I've done a lot of work on this. The signatories are, of course, welcome to thank me later for all I've done. But perhaps they would join me now in thanking Jen Stevens, Graham Gadsden, Carol Meekins and others for all the work they've done and are still doing to stabilise this service and return things to normality.
Hear, hear.
Councillor Carton, did you still want to speak, even though I've just suggested we go straight to CHI? Oh, great.
Only to say that this item needs to be discussed by CHI, not only as a briefing, not only as a briefing to CHI members, but also that visiting members will be heard by CHI and can ask questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Carton. Members, you're all agreed on that, are you? We go straight to CHI. Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. And that moves us neatly on to item 22, which is the review of allocation of seats on committees. I call upon the Head of Policy, Communications and Governance to submit her report to the Council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I commend the report to Council with the amended Appendix 1 as circulated.
Very much. Do I have a seconder? No. Oh, I need a proposer, which is Councillor Burton. Sorry, Councillor Burton.
Madam Mayor, I'll read this as quickly as possible. I move that the allocation of seats on committees be as set out in amended Appendix 1 to the report of the Head of Policy, Communications and Governance, which has been circulated separately, and that wishes of the group leaders regarding the membership of committees as set out in the schedule circulated at the meeting be accepted.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. Councillor English, did you want to second?
Yes, as it mostly affects my group, I will.
Okay, thank you very much. Is the motion agreed, members? Lovely, thank you very much indeed. Item 23, review of allocation of seats on the Comptree Manor Estates Charity Committee. I call upon the Head of Policy, Communication and Governance to submit her report, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I commend the report to Council.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I call upon the leaders to move the motion. Councillor Burton.
I move that the allocation of seats on the Comptree Manor Estate Charity Committee be as follows: Conservative 3, Liberal Democrats 1, Independent none, Maidstone Group 1, Labour none, Councillor Mackay none, Councillor de Wigan and Shepherd none, and that the wishes of the group leaders regarding the membership of the committee as set out in the schedule circulated at the meeting be accepted.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder for that? Thank you. Councillor English has seconded. Is the motion agreed, members? Thank you very much indeed. Item 24 is the review of allocation of seats. Oh, what? Back on 23?
No, on Royal West Kent.
On the 24. Yeah, item 24.
You can do that in writing afterwards.
Oh, all right. I call upon the Head of Policy, Communications and Governance to submit her report. You could do it verbally.
Subject to the replacement as a substitute of Councillor Daly by Councillor Nagy.
We can do that, can't we?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I commend the report to Council with that amendment.
With that amendment, thank you, Councillor English. Are we all agreed? Thank you very much, members.
Hang on, you haven't had a proposer or a seconder yet.
You see, I'm getting overexcited now because we're getting near the end of the meeting. Who actually proposed that, Councillor?
I've yet to propose it, haven't I?
Yes.
Right. I move that the allocation of seats on the Queen's Own Royal West Kent Regiment Museum Trust Committee be as follows: Conservatives 3, Liberal Democrat 1, Independent 1, Maidstone Group none, Labour none, Councillor Mackay none, Councillor Wigan and Shepherd none, and that the wishes of the group leaders regarding the membership of the committee as set out in the schedule circulated at the meeting verbally be accepted.
Thank you. Subject to the amendment. Lovely.
I'll second that.
Was there a seconder? Seconded about 3 times. Are we all agreed, members? Thank you very much indeed. I can now declare the meeting closed. Please maintain social distancing at all times. Avoid congregating at the exit or anywhere else in the room, the few of us that are here. Thank you very much, members and officers. Safe journey home and Merry Christmas. And it's only 9:30. It's only 9:30.